What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan. I like to trade these leveraged ETFs in the after hours. I like to do some technical analysis and make a video of it. So what do we got today? We've got Russia, bull 3x shares, RUSL. We've got BRZU, Brazil, 3x shares, leveraged ETF. We've got Spxl, S&P, the overall market, 3x leveraged ETF. We've got XIV, ZIV, short inverse volatility ETF. We've got LABU, which is 3x shares biotech sector. We've got Nugget, which is 3x gold ETF. We've got SOXL, the Semiconductors, 3x ETF. We've got UWT and DWT, the 3x crude oil ETF. And last but not least, we've got UGAZ, which is the 3x leveraged natural gas ETF. So starting off with RUSL, what can we see here? Looking at a longer term time frame, we've got it on the daily right now. We can see that we are in a notable uptrend channel here, marked by this bluish channel that goes northeasterly direction. And then we have our predicted pattern setup that we thought was playing out right here. We've got this symmetrical triangle. It rises into the price action, touches this bottom here, goes up, sets our A, B, C, D, E, and then we were expecting the potential to break out, retest, and run. So what do we have here in the price action? Here on the daily, we've got a run up, touch, creates, identifies our resistance zone, comes down, sets in our A, confirms our support zone, B, C, D, E. And I have these blue lines from yesterday's video marking, just the follow through of what we expected in the trend. Instead, we have the inverse taking place right here. We saw a massive dump in shares today. Let's go zoom into the 2-hour chart. And we see a huge amount of bear volume come into the stock. It was down 8% today, huge move. Let's zoom into the 30-minute chart. And you can just see how far we've fallen here. We broke through all these support zones. We had, one right here, 2 right here, actually probably 3. Next support zone I'm looking at is this 36.63. So let's go ahead and make a note of that. Let's draw a support line. So I wanted to show you guys why I like the time indicator that is here on TradingView so much. We can see here that I drew this on the hourly chart back here. We go from a low to another low. We come back and we tag this low right here. We get in on a low right here. We come up to a high right here. Comes down to, halfway in between the movement here, but it is a significantly lower drop. And we come over here and we set in what might be our apex of the symmetrical triangle over here. And we can see that how it affected the price. We see that this is the low. It came up and immediately we see a larger than average move in price. So let's go into the 5-minute and see if we see anything today. I guess we still are in this larger channel, even though we broke out of our descending triangle or symmetrical triangle. And one thing I wanted to note right off the bat is even though we are in the 5-minute chart, it is still significant because you can see that we're still looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 months of price action in this 5-minute chart. So I like to zoom in to these smaller time frames specifically for that reason. So we've got our next support level right here, and I guess what I'm expecting in the coming days is for us to come down, tag our lower channel line as well as this support level, come up, retest, and then we could potentially see a larger fall down in share price. In the short term, we are getting oversold here on our RSI level, even though for our CCI indicator, which is this one right in the middle, we do see an increased amount of bear volume come into this and not a lot of bull volume. So since this pattern broke out to the downside instead of our expected upside, we're going to go ahead and delete these and go with our new analysis of what's going on. So that is RUSL. Let's move on to Brazil, BRZU. Let's go ahead and look at the 2-hour chart. And we can see that this channel we have right here is capturing a large amount of the price action since last July. We've been stuck in this channel. Even though if you wanted to draw a longer time frame upwards channel, that might be possible. So for the long term, I guess I am bullish on Brazil. It's in a year-long uptrend. It's at pretty firm support levels right here. I drew this support line right here, and we can go ahead and bold that just to show its significance. So we have a support level here. resistance, 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 resistance. Now it's support. Come up, test our upper channel line, and now it's support again. Upper channel line, upper channel line, and now it's acting as support as we saw that huge sell-off. Another thing of note in the higher time frame here is that there is a history of recovery after a large sell-off in price. For example, we can see back here in November, we fell about the exact same distance and we fully recovered it in the next 2 months of trading. So even though we do have this big scary dump in price right here, there is a history of it recovering quite well. Let's see here. What else do I see? In the medium term, there was a huge dump on financial or fundamental news for Brazil. And we can see that this price action, this rise from the bottom of 23 up to what it is of 28.22 right now, may have just been a dead cat bounce for all we know. For all we know, it might be one of these. Over here, we see that, a massive sell-off and then short-term bounce before it consolidates down here at its support level for the next, 2 months before following up higher. So what might be happening right here, we might be seeing a dead cat bounce, and it might be followed by some chop for the next several months. So I'd be interested in buying more BRZU if it gets back down to these $24 ranges, and just taking my luck and seeing if anything were to occur. We can see that this dead cat bounce occurred over here because our volume, our CCI, dropped way below 250, which is my max level of volume before I think it's very oversold, coupled with the fact that the RSI dropped all the way down to call it 8, which is about as low as I've ever seen it, and our CCI actually came all the way down to 400. This is extremely oversold conditions, and we can see this further supported by our second volume indicator down here. So let's move on to a shorter time frame. I just want to see what I wrote for it. It looks like we broke the ascending triangle, and there's been large sell volume coming into the stock. So what did we have in previous videos? We saw a cup and handle / head and shoulders in one of these videos, left shoulder, head, right shoulder. This was pretty obvious. I had a nice little trade in here. And then I saw what I predicted to be a larger cup and handle playing out right now. And to be honest, it might still be playing out. We might still be able to extend these trend lines, which seem to be acting as some relative support right here. We could potentially clone this and see if we can find any type of a channel that this is in. This might be a fair enough channel. But as far as our ascending triangle goes, we came down, touched A, B, C, D, and then our E is supposed to come right here, and we're supposed to break out and move higher. However, we dropped back down and moved lower. So what I'm going to go and do is delete this because this is no longer valid. And this is our predicted price movement, and it did actually, follow this fairly well, except for these last 2 arrows or 3 arrows that I have right here. So if this larger cup and handle wants to play out, it's getting to the point where the price is getting a little bit too far on the right side for me to call it still valid, but I guess we'll wait another day or two before we go ahead and ultimately call it. So that is BRZU. I guess I'd be looking for a support over here or down here at the $27 range, and I might make a trade based on this support that we have right here. Moving on to Spxl, the market. Let's see, what did I have written down here? I said on May 30th that the chart guy sentiment was that this was an ideal bull flag and there is decreasing bullish volume or bearish volume. I would concur with this analysis, I guess. I'm only seeing a bull flag at the moment. On the short term, I'm neutral as the bull flag consolidates. I can see the market dropping very lightly for the next, towards the end of the week and into mid next week. For the medium term, I see a bullish triangle, ascending triangle breakout, and we'll cover that in a second. And in the longer term, I see that we are slightly overbought and the Rsi Divergence on the daily. So what am I talking about here? So I guess right here, I see that we are overbought, and the Rsi Divergence on the daily actually comes to us right here, as we see marked by this blue arrow that this is the high of our RSI, and we move downwards. And we're just bouncing off this 50% RSI level. However, in the price action, we can see that while we moved down in RSI, we moved up in price. This is typically not a great sign. However, it's not the end of the world because we did have a breakout and we may just be flagging. And last but not least, we are staying above this 50 RSI line very nicely, which is very bullish for the scenario, the pattern that's playing out right here. Let's zoom into the hourly and see this bull flag consolidation. So just touching on the ascending triangle that I have here, I have our price pattern, and we're supposed to move up, touch A, B, C, D, E, break out a little bit, retest, and then move higher. So what do we have in the price? We have a move up, touch, confirms our resistance level, A confirms our support level, and we have B, C, D, E, breakout, and we're currently in the midst of this wave right here, which is retesting previous support. Now we might have hit it today, but I'm not so sure, even though we did have a nice turnaround in stock prices here towards the end of the day. Let's move on to the 15-minute and just take a look. You can definitely, I mean, if you want the flag right here, let's see, let's draw it from right here all the way down over there. All right, so that is my short-term analysis, medium-term and long-term for the S&P 500 3x leveraged ETF. Let's move on to volatility, XIV, ZIV. We can see here that we came up and broke this resistance line. Therefore, in the Elliott wave theory, for the long-term trend, this is a super cycle. We've got our 1 up here, 2, long 3-leg, 4, and I think that we might be in the midst of setting in a 5th wave right now. I'm long-term bullish on XIV. I think it's great simply because it is designed to constantly mature in price as the futures contracts roll over. It's up 400% in the last year. In comparison, we have UVXY, which is the inverse of XIV, and we can see that it's just in a pretty constant decline. Now, it is getting a little bit oversold here in the short term. However, I would never make a trade in this unless the RSI is absolutely oversold and just all my indicators line up. So let's go back to XIV. In the medium term, we can see that we are approaching the end of our 5th wave here, and it's towards the top of a channel. For example, this is the top of a channel. It's been acting as pretty solid support and resistance line. See, we have support, 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 resistance, 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 support, resistance, support, and we are probably 75% of the way up to our resistance line again. So let's move on to our shorter time frame. Actually, let's first off see what we have right here. We have I'm bearish in the short term just because we are at a 141% fib resistance level. The next and absolute sellout point for me, I'm still holding about half my shares, is this 161.8% resistance level, which also marks the previous top before we plummeted. We are on a RSI bull divergence on the 5-minute chart, and we might have a head and shoulders complex top going on. So let's go to the 5-minute and look at this divergence going on. It is a bullish divergence, it looks like. As shown by these blue arrows here, we have a very low RSI level right here, marked by a higher RSI level. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit clearer. So lower low, higher low, and on the price action, we have a low and a lower low. So this is a small divergence, which I see, which I note that towards the end of the day, we did see a large spike in price play out. However, I don't think that this RSI divergence is huge, nor is it a long-term divergence. So as far as the complex head and shoulders go, I see these wicks down here of the low as our neckline. So I've drawn out this neckline level right here, and I labeled it, and we can see that a regular head and shoulders top is just the left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder. However, a complex top is a left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and a right shoulder. We have yet to set in our right shoulder, but for the short term, I have a resistance and support level right here, and a resistance and support level right here. This has acted as a resistance level multiple times now. We have it getting rejected here, resistance, 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 breakthrough, didn't support it, and we have resistance here again. And so therefore, my prediction for tomorrow is that we might come in and get rejected off this resistance again, and we might fall through all the way back down. If we don't break the neckline, then I think that this complex head and shoulders is invalidated and we will move up. However, if it does start to turn around, I expect a further price drop than this neckline right here. Complex head and shoulders typically have higher volume on the left side. We can kind of see that right here, although there isn't more volume, I would say, than the right side. But ascending volume is a further indication of breakdown, and we do have a ascending volume trend over here on the right side. So that is my analysis on the inverse VIX, XIV. Let's move on to biotech, LABU, and check out what's been going on. So we can see here right away that on the longer term time frame, we are in a pretty significant uptrend with this channel right here. This captures probably about 90% of the price action over the last year. And I said on the long term, I'm bullish because of this channel. Medium term, I'm neutral as this symmetrical triangle played out. And in the short term, I'm bearish because of the head and shoulders right here. I guess this would be a more medium term. This is a large head and shoulders that is playing out right now, and we're seeing that come to fruition. But in the shorter term, let's go to the 30-minute chart, and we can see what I was seeing, which was this expected price pattern. So this is what I would call a bearish symmetrical triangle. We see price come down, retouch, go up, and set in our A, B, C, D, E over here, and then we come back and retouch, and we move lower. So over here in the price, we see us move down, come up, and we set in our A, B, C, D, E. It was a false breakout above here, even though I did have this blue trend line right here, and it did act as natural resistance for this price and rejected our breakout, and we fell way back down. We see that, I guess I can delete this level right here. That didn't work. We broke through this support level right here. This was a huge support level, and the last hope was this channel, and it looks like it bounced off of this bottom channel line, which is a pretty good sign. Symmetrical triangles have the tendency to bust and double bust. We see that here as we broke out and we busted and we came back down. We might even see a double bust if we go and shoot back up. We still have time before we reach the apex of this triangle. The apex of this triangle might actually be this blue line, in which case I can easily see us coming up and right at the apex right here, breaking out and moving higher. Again, my long-term thesis is bullish on biotech simply because the trend has been up. We can see that we are oversold here on the hourly. One interesting thing that we might want to change our thesis on is the potential for this descending triangle. We can see that not only was it supported at the bottom of this channel, but it was also supported at these previous support lines that I have drawn here. I've got 1, 2, 3 drawn, and we can see that these two support lines come through and act as support and resistance in the past, so this was a pretty major level. So what we might be interested in doing is changing our thesis from a ascending triangle or a symmetrical triangle to a descending triangle. We can start to see this overhead resistance level come into fruition. We can see that we come up here and we set our resistance level. This might be A, B, C, and we might very well move up here and hit D, come back down and hit E, and then break out higher. So this might be my short-term to medium-term thesis on LABU. So let's move on to gold miners, Nugget. Let's see here. So here we have, a pretty notable downtrend. However, we are coming into some pretty hard support and resistance zones. Long term, I'm neutral. I can't get a read on the long-term price action just because it is coming into this, pattern right here is not an indication of a long-term reversal. However, this is Nugget and it decays in price naturally. I'm going to go to GDX in a moment here because I find that GDX shows the price action and pattern a little bit better. However, I do trade Nugget and JNug. I just use GDX as a indication of the trend. So on the medium term, it says here that last night I saw that TradingView had 9 bulls and 10 bears. It is in a symmetrical triangle, and there's more bull volume coming in on the CCI than bear volume. In the short term, I saw that it was rejected at its long-term resistance and broke short-term trendline RSI divergence. So let's just go ahead and go to GDX. And let's go to the daily to show you guys what I mean by the long-term chart. We have this horseshoe U shape, which I've never seen before. It's pretty interesting. So starting from 2015, I think that we are able to identify this new channel, which is in an uptrend actually. We can see that this is resistance here at 1 point, 2 points, and we can see that this is support here at 1, 2, 3 points. However, from the long-term perspective, we do have a large overhead resistance level from this line coming all the way across here, all the way back from 2011. But this U shape is very interesting, and you can see that it's tagging price pretty well. We see that with these blue arrows, that it went down, bounced almost directly straight up, directly straight down, sideways, down, up, down, up, down. And what's interesting is this is the exact price pattern you would expect if it were to bounce off in the direction that it came in from this horseshoe and got rejected off these lines. So for some reason, this horseshoe seems significant to me. I've decided to keep it around. On May 30th, the chart guys, if you don't know who they are, they're great. They're on StockTwits. I would only have good things to say about them. I'd recommend checking it out if you get a chance. Their stance is neutral right now. I don't think that anyone has a good read of what's going to happen right here. This is an extremely important time for gold to make up its mind whether it's going to continue moving lower in the longer time frame or perhaps break out much higher. I think that when you want to talk about risk and reward, I see much higher reward towards the bullish side than I see towards the bearish side. So let's zoom into a shorter time frame, get a look at the pattern that we have playing out. I have another symmetrical triangle. I see it comes down, sets in our A, B, C, D, E, and right now it's like price doesn't really know what it wants to do. In the past, we can kind of see that it makes an immediate drop down and an immediate rise up, an immediate drop down. However, we are at the end of this symmetrical triangle, and once we hit our E wave, we bounced up, and instead of doing an immediate drop down again, we are just kind of flagging out right here and moving sideways. GDX has been in this dollar range now for probably 2 weeks. So what can I see in the 30-minute? Got some fib lines and some price predictions from the previous day's video. So longer term thesis, I'm bullish on gold. I see it coming up, breaking out of this long-term resistance line. Needs to get up over this long-term resistance line. This is medium-term resistance. This is long-term resistance. You can see how close they are together in price. But I see us coming up, retesting, and then breaking out. I have these two vertical lines drawn here because they mark the middle of this time line that I have here. You saw in my previous analysis of RUSL why I like these. I think they're significant. This timeline over here comes down right perfectly at the apex about. And so we have a low here, and this might be the low over here. So, to go on with my theory, we see that towards the middle to 60% of the trend, we see that we have tops in each of these timelines. So this is the middle of the channel, 60% in between these two timelines right here. And right here, I marked the middle of this timeline over here. So we have the middle and about 60% right here. So what I could see is this just being a massive flag, kind of like we had over here back in April before we shot up higher. I could see this just being a massive flag and we moving up higher. And we move up higher and we might tag this 161, which would be absolutely huge. And then I think we're going to be towards the middle of the trend, and I think that we're going to see it fall back down, and we might retouch this longer term resistance line and cause it to be new support, which would also be huge. In a slightly more bearish case, it might fall all the way back down, come back into this apex, and then shoot higher. As for the Fibonacci lines and more of the bear case, we can see that we are in this downtrend, and given previous price action, we've basically taken a dump all the way down. So I can see us, moving sideways here before breaking down, retesting this support line over here at the 50% fib, bouncing up slightly higher before falling all the way down to this ultimate bearish price line. This wouldn't be the worst case scenario if we do hit this price line. Be a good entry point, and I can see us shooting up a lot higher. Anyways, that is my short-term thesis on GDX. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out for the rest of the week. So moving on to Spxl Semiconductors. A lot has been going on in semiconductors recently as far as a technical analysis perspective goes. Spxl, I've been holding on to it for several months. It's been an absolute darling of a stock. I love it, and I recently sold out of it yesterday. And you know, it's stocks like these that really make you question whether you should be a long-term holder or not. We can see how much it's ran in the last year. However, from the technical perspective, you know, sometimes it's best just to take profits and wait for a pullback for a re-entry, and that's what I think I'm doing right now. Why am I doing this? As a medium-term, short-term, and long-term thinker, all time frames are bearish to slightly bearish for me at the moment. As far as, like I said, a technical perspective goes. For the long-term perspective, we're nearing the end of our fifth wave super cycle. So going back over here, we can see that we had this consolidation zone, this accumulation zone. We broke out, new trend. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have the fifth marked up here. You can't really see it. However, we can identify that this channel right here has acted as pretty solid support and resistance for over the last year, which usually a channel doesn't last that long, so it is a significant channel. But recently, I know it's a little bit foggy right here, but we can see that we broke out of this channel. We are above this channel now, and therefore we are in a unsustainable new uptrend that has started. It's overbought on the daily time scale. We can see that we are at a 70 RSI today. For our volume indicators, our CCI, we are at 250, which is extremely overbought at this point. We can see that we've only been at this 250 level on the daily time frame for the CCI once right here, twice right here, and this is the third time right now. It also kind of goes hand in hand with the Elliott wave theory. If you're not a big fan, there are basically three waves. There's a one wave, a three wave, and a fifth wave. So that's kind of a little bit more support for the reason and rationale for my Elliott wave right here. So we do have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grand cycle that is coming to the end of its fifth wave. In the medium time frame, I have a shorter time frame 5-wave Elliott wave that came in. Again, this CCI indicator is a good indication of momentum and strength of a trend, but I've also found that it's kind of you know, good for using in Elliott wave theory, kind of like I showed on the longer term time frame. But we have our first wave here, our second wave right here, and our third wave right here. And so I marked Elliott wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so this is on the medium time frame, getting to the end of our fifth Elliott wave. As far as RSI divergence goes, I do see one. I see that we have a very overbought range here on the RSI. We have a higher high and a lower high, and here on the price action we have a high and then a higher high. This is a divergence as price goes up but RSI goes down. This is typically not the best case scenario. We are at the 222% fib level. I guess I can see us running all the way up to the 261.8. However, we did already kind of get rejected off that. I think our high here was 99.60 about, and this is at looks like 120, so call it close enough. As for the shorter term time frames, let's look at the 15-minute, and I drew a short-term Elliott wave that I saw. So I see us having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 coming here at the peak and also tagging the top of our channel. That's another thing to keep in mind, is that the new channel that we drew, it's at the very top of this new channel. It's broken out of the highs of our longer term channel, and it's at the highs of our new, even more elevated channel. And last but not least, the dagger that I'm seeing right here for semiconductors, and ultimate reason I sold out, was this head and shoulders top that I see going on here. you can say that it broke out over here, but then I would counter you with saying that it had this rise right here as well. So perhaps a further resistance zone might be this complex top that we have here. I talked about complex tops in XIV volatility, which has been another darling this year. You know, I could even see the case being made for this to be a diamond top, and this is very rare. I've only seen, you know, 2 or 3 of them. I've never taken a trade in them, but you know, this could be potentially a diamond top forming right here. So that'd be interesting to watch play out. You can see that we were, you know, we were basically flat for the day. And I guess I'm happy that I took my profits so high, but I would recommend that if you are holding those semiconductor stocks, those in NVIDIA, those MU, those AMD, we can already see weakness in AMD. I don't know, it's just the case for the 3 times bull ETF semiconductor is not all that bullish at the point. There's far more room to go down than there is for us to go up. All right, so that's my analysis for SOXL. Let's go on to crude oil, UWT. We can see here on the longer time frames that we are in a definite downtrend. This is the bullish version for UWT. I have been accumulating shares of DWT. And so from a long-term perspective, we have a bearish downtrend channel. From a medium-term perspective, we have a bear potential head and shoulders on USO and US oil. We have a lot of resistance above here. I've noted this here at important resistance level 50, 127.2, 141.4, and 161.8, all drawn from different fib lines, all converging on this level right here. And we can see that we were rejected extremely hard today off this resistance level. We're down almost 8%. And we do have finally an ABCD pattern. From the short term, I'm neutral, I guess, and I wrote this last night. I saw a potential cup and handle. It has space to go higher to complete the ABC. The time fib marks new lows, and there is a negative downtrend divergence. I'm going to have to change this tonight. This was last night, because basically this neutral rating, I got to turn it to a bear rating now because we did have an 8% dump today. Let's go to DWT because I'm actually holding this stock, and I find it is a little bit more clear. I don't have as much drawn on it. So there's a longer term cup and handle that I saw playing out here. You see that we have this rise and this fall, rounded bottom, big rise right here, slight fall down, and then we broke out today above this, you know, kind of symmetrical triangle that I had drawn right here. And we broke out very convincingly, up 8% today. So what did I have going on in the symmetrical triangle? I guess I saw an initial 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave. We came down and we set in our ABC. I remember very closely calling this out yesterday in the video. I said, you know, don't be, you know, bullish on oil. I think that this might just be an ABC correction, and we did see that come into fruition today. It was ABC, and let's go ahead and delete this line. We can delete this line, and we can delete this line. Let's delete this fib, and we can delete this resistance line now. And what are we left with? We're left with it came down twice and got supported both times at the 50% fib level. Can delete this, and we have a new breakout. You can see it's quite obvious right here. And the small drop that we had in price today, I think, was just consolidation, really. As far as volume goes, we have a lot more bull volume coming into the stock, and we did have this bear volume. However, this came up to 360, and the bear volume was at 202. Therefore, there's more bull volume coming into the stock today than bear volume. Let's move back to UWT and take a look at it. So on the 15, what can we see again? I'm going to go back to our time fibs, and we have an absolute high right here, middle of the channel, middle of the downward price action. This next fib line was almost the low, but not the low. This one was about halfway up on its move upwards. This marks the absolute high. And what do I think this next fib line is going to be? I think that this is going to be the halfway mark again. I think that we might come down, consolidate, and then break even lower, and then this next fib line might be our ultimate low. I have 2 exit prices right here that I plan on getting out at 14.05, and then down here even further at about 13. As far as the trade setup goes, what was I talking about when I said a 5 out of 5 trade setup? All the other factors included in this, I saw a longer term significant RSI divergence. We see that we have an absolute high right here, and then RSI just moves lower and lower and lower. as price moved higher and higher and higher before breaking this 50 line and just absolute massive dump and sell off. So these are, I've deleted the fib lines because they clog up the chart, but I've outlined them here in black. We have two huge resistance lines right here, and then an important breakthrough line, which was the combination of a 61.8 and 78.6 overlap in Fibonacci. So it was important to get below this black line right here today, and we did that very convincingly. My next Fibonacci support was right down here, and we can see that we came down and touched this pretty much perfectly. Came down, touched it perfectly, bounced up, and I think that we are going to see some further falls in the upcoming days. So let's go ahead and delete some of these lines. You don't need these anymore. Delete this mini Elliott wave. I did show that we had an ABC. I bought some UWT and wrote it up. I got stopped out right here, so I basically didn't make anything on that trade, but it was worth a try. I saw the ABC, and you got to take your chances when you see them. Anyways, I'm going to delete this now. I'm going to delete this ABC. I think I saw a smaller time frame divergence. We moved up here, and our RSI moved downwards again. That's over with now. I'm going to delete that. And we can see that my prediction from when we were down here on the 26th, it was that we were going to move up and hit this resistance level and then probably move down lower. And my arrow comes down almost to where the price goes to. So that was a pretty good prediction, I guess. And I actually, tried to make a trade out of it, but it wasn't very, profitable. Anyways, this is my short-term, medium-term, long-term thesis on UWT. Let's move on to the last one, which is natural gas, UGAS. And what do we have here in UGAS? We've got a long-term channel consolidating zone right here that I've drawn that has captured the price action of basically the last 4 or 5 months here in this move. So let's zoom in a little bit further. As far as my notes go, long-term bullish. There are previous bounces in May and June. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Medium term, I'm neutral. It's in an ABC correction. There are 2 gap fills on its way down, so that might be bullish as it comes and fills those gaps. And it's approaching this new time fib over here. So as far as the times go, we have a low, a high, a low, a high. And I think that this might be the ultimate low that comes down over here. I'm going to be scooping up a lot of shares. These black lines right here mark fib lines, and I'll be interested to see these come down and act as support and resistance in the coming days. But as far as Elliott wave goes, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Elliott wave theory is expected to have an equal weighted corrective move the same time as the impulse wave, which was the bullish move. And we can see that playing out pretty well right here. We have 1, 2, 3, and then as far as the corrective wave, we have 1, 2, 3 over here. So we're almost towards the end of this corrective wave, and I'd be very interested to see what happens at the end of this. Moving on to what I mean by so for the short term, I'm bullish. I think it's oversold. It might have a dead cat bounce, and it might have a slow sideways to create a definite bottom, kind of like we saw over here in March, where it made this bottom, dead cat bounce, and confirmed the bottom, and then moved higher. So as far as what I mean by long-term bullish, I think this is extremely interesting. There's previous bounces in May and June, and I think that this is represented pretty well here on the UNG chart. So what can we see in UNG? And let's just kind of mirror it a little bit. So we have a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Oh, and these happen, this is March, April, May, June right here. And over here, the reason that it's significant is we're in the same trend at the same time as last year. So this is March, April, May, and June is almost right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we come down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. And then we have a bunch of chop in this sort of semicircle that we have taking place right here. And we also see a semicircle taking place over here. They're slightly different, but very similar in a lot of ways. And I kind of want to go ahead and take the time just to show what I mean. So let's get our drawing tool out here, and let's draw the price move here. All right, so we've drawn the price move over here, and notice how nicely it reciprocates on the other side at the exact same time. See how nice that is? I think that's very clear, how closely that these prices match up. Notice that these are the same time of month, pretty much the exact same price movements. And as far as the other side goes, we have a double wave down, and we see that right here we have a down, up, down. Over here we have this down, up, down. So what am I doing right now? I'm going back to you guys' chart, and let's check it out on these smaller time frames. So over here I have some support lines and notes filled out. So I think that this is a support line. I dragged it all the way across. Again, we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C. And on another trading platform, I can identify pivot points. And the first pivot point, our first support level, was at 1780. We can see that we fell right through that. This was a fib line right here. It was a double support line. We can see that we fell through that. And then the second pivot point that was marked in the final pivot point on my other charting platform was at 1510, and we can see that it was supported very well today here at 1510. As far as these gap fills go, I do expect these to get filled at some point. For example, we can see a gap fill over here when it fell from 2150 to 2050. We came down even further, and then we came back and filled this gap back to 2150. Now we have two huge gap fills. We have one that came here from 1880 down to 1680 about, and then we had a second one for the second day in a row here at 1625 down to 1580. So I'm be interested to see these gaps get filled in the upcoming days. Moving on to a even smaller time frame, let's change this back to Fibonacci. I have this RSI divergence right here, and this is turning into a fairly large RSI divergence over the last 2 days. We can see that we have our ultimate low RSI right here, and we can see that our RSI has been moving up, up, up. Right now we're just at the 50 level. It's very important for us to get up above the 50 level, and I think that we might be seeing that. So we have a low here all the way to a high, and we have a low here down to a lower low. So this is a big RSI divergence that I see playing out right here. We can see that bear volume on our CCI is starting to shore up a little bit. People are taking profits. We're at this near-term time fib line over here, and we also have a pivot point down here at 1510. I set a couple large limit orders at 1510, and they were filled. I think it got to a low today of about 1505. So let's go to the 1 minute chart. I saw some divergences, I guess, today. We can see that we have price move from a high to a lower high, but RSI here is low and then or high and then a higher high. So this is another type of divergence that we see right here. Another one I saw was that this was high, then it went to low, and this is the high, and the RSI is basically at the exact same level, whereas price had dropped 30-40 cents. So there are 3 short-term divergences going on here in natural gas, and I fully expect us to form a short-term bottom right here and then move way up given my short-term RSI divergence, medium-term oversold level, and long-term prediction based on the UNG natural gas chart that price in June spikes quite hard. All right, so that's my analysis for all these ETFs. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you the best of luck in trading tomorrow.